All right, so today I'm going to change the pace of things a little. I'm not going to deliver, I don't think I have enough for everyone, so one per family, especially if you file your taxes jointly, etc. So I'm going to change things around. I'm not going to deliver a full traditional sermon. I'm going to teach today. That's what rabbis do. So Hannah is distributing a source sheet with a number of sources from our tradition on the very subject of gun control. I mean, you knew that was what I was going to talk about. But I'm not going to talk about it. We're going to learn about it. I think it's important for us to learn what our tradition has to say about the use of violence, the use of weapons, etc., so that each and every one of us can form an opinion. As Todd so ably read for us, from biblical times, there was already an awareness that the proliferation of weapons in society was not, to say the least, a good thing. So the promise of Hosea, the prophet here, is that when the day comes, God makes a pact with humanity to banish all weapons. So today, I want to spend a little bit of time with you looking at the sources in our tradition that speak about gun control, although there were no guns there, but certainly there were weapons. So if I were to ask you, let me widen my lens here so everybody can be seen. If I were to ask you, what is the first instance of violence in the Bible, what would you say? Cain and Abel. Do you know why Cain killed his brother? Thank you, Linda, because he was Abel. So now that we got that one out of the way, yes, that is the very first instance of violence. There is something very intriguing respect of this episode in which one human being happens to kill another. The Midrash says that he used the jawbone of an animal, probably a donkey, to kill the brother. But the Torah doesn't say anything about what transpired. Why did Cain kill his brother? What was the dialogue? Did Cain say, "You've wronged me, you've done something to me"? Did Abel say, "No, please don't kill me"? I mean, whatever. We don't know what transpired there. All we know is that there was violence. But the Torah doesn't say anything. The Torah does tell us that Cain would be then known as a person of violence. We know that God gives him a sign on the forehead. Interesting enough, as children, we all thought that that sign on the forehead was so people knew he was a bad person. No, it was the opposite. Cain says to God, when people know me and see me and know what I did, they will want to kill me. So God said no. And he put a sign on Cain's forehead that if people saw that, they shouldn't touch him because God didn't want him to be killed by others. So the idea here was not to proliferate the spilling of blood, right? How does God say that he found out that Cain had killed his brother? The text doesn't say, "Oh, I know you killed him." What does the text say? How does the text say Cain killed Abel? How does God say, hey, by the way, very easy, you'll remember this. It says, "The blood of your brother calls out to me." Remember that? God says, "Where is your brother?" And Cain says, "I don't know." And God says, "The blood of your brother calls out to me. What have you done to him?" So we have an understanding in the Torah, of course, that blood is the essence of life, and that you're not allowed to spill blood for no reason. So the question that is begged, of course, is, are there any other considerations, circumstances in which blood can be spilled? So the first text before you is also from the book of Genesis, Bereshit, chapter 27. Very simple. You'll remember that Isaac is about to die. He wants to have his last big banquet, and he tells his son to go out, take your gear, to quiver and bow, and go out into the open and hunt me some game. Remember that? Bring an animal and prepare it as a banquet for me. And when you come back and I've satisfied myself, I will give you a blessing, right? And of course, Rebecca, you know the whole story. Well, what's interesting here is that it seems that killing an animal was okay, was acceptable. In fact, Isaac says to his son, he thinks he's talking to Esau, right? Go and hunt. So we know that weapons were part of life. People used weapons for survival, to hunt, perhaps also to defend themselves, etc., etc. The Bible is full of battles and instances in which people had to go and lift up their sword and, you know, all this imagery of war and killing. So the Bible and Judaism are no stranger to the fact that there is killing in the world. Sometimes killing is senseless, for no reason, like Cain and Abel. Sometimes killing has a purpose, whether it is to eat. In this verse, we have, go kill an animal so we can eat it. The next verse comes from the book of Exodus. Now we have legislation. People live in a society and life happens. The reason we have laws and lawyers and judges and legislation is because life happens, and sometimes what happens is not necessarily for the benefit of one or the other, so somebody has to decide between them, right? So in the book of Shemot, we're told, if the thief is seized while thieving and he is killed, there is no blood in this case. So the law seems to indicate that if you have an intruder that comes into your domain and for some reason you kill him, because of his intention, you are not responsible. Now, there are other instances where if somebody comes into your domain and you kill him, you would be responsible. But what the Torah is telling us here is that the intention of the intruder is important, okay? It is so important, let me jump many centuries forward, that the law was codified in the following way. If intruders come into a person's house, no. In the middle of the night, and you wake up and you see him there, can you kill him, Arlene? Yes. You can take their life. It's considered an act of self-defense. Now, Arlene Sivakov, if it's in the middle of the day and the guy walks into your house and you chance upon him, can you kill him and continue to be innocent? Probably not, because you can see him. It's not because you can see him, but rather because if they walk into your house in the middle of the night, they know you're going to be there. And that if they get caught, they may be harmed, right? But if they enter the house or the premises in the middle of the day, what's the assumption? That perhaps nobody's there. And so they don't expect that to be killed for being there. Therefore, if the intruder comes in the middle of the day and they are killed, there is no self-defense because their intention was very different. You weren't supposed to be there to begin with. Whether this is right or wrong, we can argue for a long time, but I'm trying to point out that how complex the law becomes in general. Number 3, the Mishnah. By the time the Mishnah comes up, we're told, a man may not go out with a sword, nor with a bow, nor with a shield, nor with a round shield, nor with a spear. How do you understand this text? Basically, to give you a little bit of context, if you notice, this comes from the Mishnah Shabbat. What do we discuss on Shabbat? What you can or cannot do on Shabbat. So the question is, can a person walk out of their domain carrying any of these weapon-like things? Wait. No, because you're not supposed to carry. You think so, you know too much, but it's not true. The question is, of course, are these really weapons? If I walk out with a sword sticking out in uniform, is that a weapon? It's part of my uniform. It's decoration. In fact, in the Arab world, you know, they have these sabers and knives. They carry them not so much to use them, but they're part of their garb, of their decoration. You wouldn't be caught in the Wild West without your 6-shooter, right? Not necessarily because you expected to shoot someone. It was just part of what people wore. So the question here is, if part of your garb, part of your vestments and so on is carrying a shield or a spear, are you allowed to carry it on Shabbat? The answer here, of course, is you may not. but not because you're not allowed to carry. Let's move on to the next Mishnah, and you'll see why. It says, it's the Talmud. Rabbi Eliezer says, these weapons are not ornaments for him. Just as man is permitted to go out in public domain with other ornaments, he should be permitted to go out with weapons. I mean, I walk out of my house with the watch, all kinds of crazy ornaments. Why not carry a shield that says, look, this is my shield? I can't, those are ornaments. Continue reading below. We learn in the Mishnah that Rabbi Eliezer says, these weapons are ornaments for him. It was taught in a Braita that elaborates on the side. The rabbi said that Rabbi Eliezer, and since in European, quote, they are ornaments for him, why are they to be eliminated in the Messianic era? So the question here is, if you consider these weapons ornaments and they would be okay to carry, why does it say when we speak about the world to come that they will not be needed anymore? If you are in the Messianic era, you should be able to wear your best garb and, use all it. Why, when the Mashiach comes, will those things no longer be considered ornaments? Because it is stated, as we read every week, nation will not raise sword against nation. Because it is understood that despite the fact that these may be considered ornaments, they are still weapons. And when the Mashiach comes, there will be no reason to have any weapons around because there will be peace in the world. So from this very long, elaborate discussion, which is much more complex than making it here, we understand that people were not allowed to carry weapons just because, as ornaments, I'm not allowed to carry a gun just because it looked good on me, okay? Because it is still considered a weapon, which has the potential of causing harm. Let's go below, number 6, Avodah Zarah. It's a Mishnah, it's a discussion in the Talmud that has to do with the relationship between Jews and non-Jews. Furthermore, it is taught, listen carefully. So the question would be, all right, I'm not allowed to carry weapons, perhaps not even own them, but what about, may one sell weapons to Gentiles or the auxiliary equipment of weapons? And one may not sharpen weapons for them. So in other words, can a Jew own a gun store? Okay, I may not be allowed to wear them and own it, whatever, but how about peddling them? Am I allowed to have a gun store? The answer seems to be yes. Why not? Except it tells later on that, like we say here, one may not sell weapons to Gentiles. So if you have a gun store and you're not allowed to sell to just about anyone around, what good is having a gun store? The question is so important. It's at the core of what I want to bring up today. The rabbis in the Mishnah, in the Talmud, were very concerned. Yes, you can sell guns to anybody. Guns not guns, let's call them weapons, swords, knives, spears, shields. And you could even have the service to sharpen them and so on. You could do that. It's a legitimate business. But it says here you're not allowed to sell them to Gentiles or other people. Why? Lest the intention of the Gentile is to cause harm, whether to you or other Jews or other Gentiles. So the Talmud here is very concerned about why somebody would procure a weapon. And if you can ascertain a priori beforehand that the person has ill intentions when purchasing a weapon, you cannot sell it to them. Why? Well, there are many reasons, but perhaps the simplest one that is quoted in the tradition is another verse in the Torah that says the following: you are not allowed to place, to place any obstacles before other people. In other words, you can't do anything that may cause other people to fail, to falter, to fall, to do something wrong. You understand what I'm saying? So if I have a store that sells weapons and I sell it to the wrong person, I may be allowing that person to be in a situation that may be detrimental to them or to society. Are you following what I'm saying? One second. So I'm not allowed to create a situation for others where How do you talk to them? You ascertain them. We'll get to it in a minute. Yes, Joe. Correct. Because to the Jew, the assumption is you know who they are, you know everything about them, and you know that they're not going to go with the weapon and do something wrong. They're certainly not going to use it against you or other Jews. Now, yes, you're right. The Talmud is very one-sided. We're only concerned about ourselves. Are they going to harm us, right? But as the law evolved, it evolved universally. It's not just about harming other Jews, it's about harming anybody else. So by giving a weapon to somebody who may use it for the wrong reasons, we are enabling them to do harm. And nobody would want them to do harm, right? We want to promote peace and security for all. So that's the impetus here. Who asked me, how can you tell what's in their mind? How can you tell what the person is? You really cannot. But if we jump ahead to our own day and age, and I ask you the very same question, how can you determine if somebody who is about to purchase a weapon after their 18th birthday because they're legal, yada, 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 how do you determine what's in their mind and heart? Are they going to use it for harm? What? Arlene says you can't. Anybody have any ideas? Say again, please. Thank you, Todd. Background checks. I mean, nobody can say that background checks are 100% accurate. You know, nothing in the world is. But just as Todd turned 16, how many years ago? How old are you now? Oh my God, I'm getting old. I'm getting an alta chakra, right? So 9 years ago, when Todd was ready to learn to drive, his father, may he rest in peace, didn't just say, here are the keys, go, knock yourself out, right? Not any father. They said, go take driver's education, read the book, pass the test. Now, and then we'll see. No, the state will, if the state certifies that you are capable of driving the car, I will lend you the keys. Fine, that makes sense. When I decided half a dozen years ago, whatever the number, to buy a gun because I thought I needed to protect myself, let's not argue whether I was right or wrong, I went to the range and I took a class and they taught me how to put holes in paper, and then I had to take a test for the state, and I got what they call a permit. So somehow I know what I'm doing. Not really, but okay. It doesn't mean that getting a driver's license or a carry permit certifies that I am perfectly safe. I know how to drive. We will never get into an accident. I know how to use my weapon, and God forbid, nothing can ever go wrong. There's no guarantees. But at least other people have had an opportunity to assess and ascertain whether I am responsible enough to be given the right to drive, to carry a weapon, or anything else, right? In this country, we have free speech, but still, I cannot yell fire where there is none. We have a law that says we have the freedom of assembly. We can get together anywhere, anytime. But if I want to have a demonstration, I still have to go and get a permit from the authorities so that we can have a demonstration, which is perfectly legal. If it's perfectly legal, why should I need a permit, right? Because the authorities want to know who's organizing the demonstration, what's the reason, who's going to be there, are they going to be violent, et cetera, right? Because with the rights that we have, what comes? Responsibility. Rights that entail responsibility. So, yes, if everybody has the right to bear arms, to carry guns, we also have the responsibility to do so. That should be the standard. If you have the right to bear weapons, you should be accountable to do it responsibly. So as the rabbis in their day said, we have to determine what the intention of the person wanting to get guns is all about. If I know he's going to turn around and kill 20 kids and 2 teachers in a school, I shouldn't sell him the gun, right? Now, but there has to be some mechanism in place. The Mishneh Torah, that is Maimonides. It is forbidden to sell arms of any kind to heathen. In other words, basically what this really means is people who you don't know, people who are completely an enigma to you, of whom you know nothing about. One should not sharpen their weapons. One should not sell them a knife or anything that is likely to be a public danger. How much the more so a semi-automatic weapon, right? Shields, however, may be sold to them since they are going to be used for self-defense. So some people have said, can a small gun considered to be like a shield, something for self-defense? If you are given a 9mm Glock, you can't really go and successfully and efficiently kill 20 people in a school. Yeah, you're going to kill a few, but not in the massive one-ton. So there is a difference between a semi-automatic rifle and a gun, which could be considered almost a, did I offend you? Okay. They could be considered like a defense mechanism. There is an article that was published a few years back about Jews and guns that we could read today if you want, just so that we have an understanding. Yes, Linda? Speak up loudly. Right. Okay. He was not wearing protective shield. He was wearing military-style clothing, but there was no armor protection. No. He wasn't wearing any Kevlar or anything like that. Correct. So you're right. Certain types of shields and defense mechanism should also be sold only to people who are in the line of fire, like military and police and so on. There's no reason why anybody should have military equipment such as Kevlar and these weapons, because we live in a society that's supposedly peaceful. We don't live in a battlefield. If you are in Ukraine right now in the streets of Mariupol, I hope you have a weapon and so on. But so on, So I think we do live in a battlefield. Sometimes it does feel like that. I mean, this year alone, my nephew Stephen lived through 4 lockdowns in his school. What? In Hollywood, in the Nova School. 4 times this year, they had lockdowns because they were so scared. And this is one school, one kid. Multiply that by however many schools and kids and so on and so forth. So yes, we live almost. So there are people who are selling now backpacks for children with protective armor inside. So, and the kids are instructed, if something happens, how to use their backpacks as shields. I mean, that's a sick society when you're sending your kids to elementary school and telling them how to use their backpack as a shield. Okay? Joe, you don't feel comfortable?
No, I don't say we don't live in a peaceful society. Absolutely.
That we should, in my...
No, and it's not going to change.
All right. So since you asked me why I got my gun when I got my gun, that's the reason. Because I don't feel that we live in a safe society. When the sign was shut up at Temple Shalom a few years back, it rang a bell with me and said, Amos, if something like that happens in your shul, are you going to stand there like a little docile lamb and get shot? And we have criticized the generation of the Holocaust many times over for not doing anything. How come 1,500 people allowed themselves to be herded, is the word I was, along into cattle carts by 12 guards, and nobody did anything? I've told you, I've done this math with you, right? If every guard had a machine gun and had 1 or 2 clips with 15, 20, 30 bullets, right? So that's 12 armed soldiers, each 30 bullets, 12 por 3. That's 360 bullets, triple that, right? Not every bullet. So at least a few people would have killed, but a few people would have survived, right? But nobody did anything. So I said to myself, Amos, if that happens, I'm not going to stand here and let myself or my congregants be shot. I am going to shoot back. I may not be successful or efficient, but I'm not going to, that's why I did it, okay? I will try something, but I didn't just get a gun. What else did I do? Well, yeah, that goes without saying, but I contacted the police department. I've brought him to my synagogue twice to give us active shooter training. We have Gabriel, who has installed alarm cameras and stuff. We have so it's not like I'm just going to be here, Billy the Kid, or what was it, Wayne, John Wayne, and shoot anything that moves inside. No, we're doing proactive, and we just finished an application to the federal government for considerable funds, close to $100,000, to increase the security in our shul and all that, and so on and so forth. So it's not just about, oh, the rabbi is going to be Wyatt Earp, shoot him all. No, it is all part of a larger process, right? So that's what it's. So let's not read. You can always read this on your own. I do want to share quickly some ideas of mine. Okay? Oh no, this is not it. Wait one second. Did somebody get one of these with an attachment of two smaller pieces of paper? ¿A dónde? Yes. Over where? Mr. Gentleman. Yes, you have it. Give me back my things. No. Did you read through it? Okay, so you know what I'm going to say. Most Americans are in complete agreement that the impetus of the conversation is a national tragedy. You agree with me? To agree, however, whatever agreement we come, whether we all support gun rights, support no gun rights, or are somewhere in the middle, I believe we all agree there are always ways to tighten the laws on access that are consistent both with Jewish law and the understanding of constitutional law. Wherever possible, such tightening of the law, in my opinion, should take place. We seem to be all in agreement that it is all but impossible to confiscate the approximately 400 million, listen to the number, weapons, firearms that are presently in possession of approximately 1/3 of the American citizenship. Many may not support confiscating weapons of any sort, while others would support that. Whatever the middle ground, I don't think it's ever going to happen. There does not seem to be strong objection to raising the minimum age for weapons to 21. So Hannah, you can buy a weapon. From a personal point of view, a change in the law to allow opening of juvenile police records when a permit is requested should be possible. If a person like the kid in Texas or in Connecticut or across the state had already a juvenile record and they go to buy a weapon, the background check should be able to look into their juvie record. There seems to be agreement as well that there are other social dynamics such as mental health and the general lack of faith in public safety, their institutions like the police, and these need to be addressed and responded to equally. But to say like, no, I'm not going to say because that's political. We are all in agreement that no amendment stands alone as holy writ. Now, this is the fundamental of being a rabbi and being a Jew. Even the Torah, God's word, is not unchangeable. In fact, there are laws in the Torah that we have eliminated because we consider them not to be applicable. Why? Because the law has to evolve with history, society. So I believe that all amendments to the law, first, second, third, whatever amendments, should not be considered holy writs. Every freedom in the Bill of Rights has been limited and re-understood throughout the country's history. Again, although most support the right to free assembly, as I indicated to you before, we still need a permit to have a parade. I do not know whether we can bring an end to all the violence in the world. But let us remember that when the words of the Birkat Kohanim, which we'll recite in a little bit, are addressed, they are addressed in the singular. They say Yevareche Ha to each individual, not to us as a conglomerate. And therefore, my prayer is that we all find our own measure of personal peace, and that we find the means and the strength to export that peace to others, because we all have the power of the vote, and the power of our opinions, and the power to voice those opinions to those we think need to hear it. And in so doing, we can bring about change.